Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Nedarim Pei Zayin. Perhaps let's go back to the beginning of the Sugya, the beginning of the Mishnah on Pei Vav Amud Beis, middle of the Amud. Nadra Ishtay v'savar shenadra bitay, says the Mishnah. A fellow thinks it's his daughter making a neder, and he responds in kind either by applying a hafara or a hakama, which he does when it's his daughter's neder. It turns out nadra ishtay, it was really his wife. Perhaps they had a similar voice. So he's thinking it's daughter, but really it's his wife. In which case he misidentified the maker of the neder, right? Or the other way around, nadra bitay, it was really his daughter who made that neder. V'savar shenadra ishtay, and he's thinking it's his wife making the neder. So this is an example, a clause dealing with misidentified owner of the neder. Now we're going to move on to a mistake pertaining to the nature of the neder, a type of neder. Nadra b'nazar, his wife made a commitment to be a nazar. V'savar shenadra b'karban, and he misunderstood it. He thought she spoke about like a isser of a neder. I'm not going to drink wine or eat grapes, like any other neder you make, by using the lashon of karban or kainam. But she did not commit to the nazirus experience, but really she did, and he thought otherwise. Or the other way around, nadra b'karban, she simply vowed to abstain. V'savar shenadra b'nazar, and he's thinking, wow, she's becoming a nazar, and as a result he applied either hafara or hakama for that matter. The point is, he misunderstood the nature of the neder, misunderstood the person who made it. He misidentified the person making the neder. In the third example, we have that he misunderstood the material. Right, nadra miteinim. She made a neder against figs. V'savar shenadra min anavim. He's thinking that she mentioned grapes, or nadra min anavim. She made a neder against grapes. V'savar shenadra min ateinim, and he's thinking figs. In all these cases, whether he applied hafara or hakama, it was mistaken, and therefore it is not valid. Hareza yachzor v'yafer. If he did the hafara, he has to redo it. And the Ran points out, in the name of the Tesefta, the same thing with Hakama. The point is, you have to know what you're talking about. There can't be a toos involved. And the Keren Ura points out, you see the Gemara will base it on a pasuk, on a drasha. So he says, the Chiddush of the Mishnah is, even if husband gets up and says today, look, I understand, I thought it was my daughter, it really was my wife, but I would have made the same I would have had the same reaction. It was grapes, it turned out to be fit. I would have done the same thing that I did. It doesn't matter. You have to identify the person making the neder and direct your response accordingly. You have to verify the nature of the neder. The material, the subject matter of the neder has to be clear to you. And you need to direct your hakama or hafara directed at that, specifically at that. If there's any misunderstanding, any confusion, it is not valid. Says the Gemara, Lememra, do you mean to say Diyani Eisah Dafkahu? How do we know that this is true? How do we know you have to pinpoint the source of the neder? You have to be cognizant of the material, of the type of, because it says Yoni Eisah, he's going to disrupt the neder, Eisah, which would indicate you have to know the person. It has to be directed at her, the mother, the wife, the daughter, without any misunderstandings. And the Ran points out the same thing with Hakama. It says, Ki hechrish lo, he was silent in response to her, action. There again, it's like Oisa, indicating it has to be directed at a specific person. Is that so? Says the Gemara. It's personal. It's exact. It needs to be precise. Remember the Yoni Oisa Dafku. We have a kasha on this. V'hagabi kroim. You see, when it comes to the halacha of kriya that an aval loyalin will make upon the death of a loved one, Tichsiv al, we find the term al mentioned twice, indicating that one's kriya needs to be personal, needs to be directed, in response to a very specific event. He needs to identify the fellow who passed away and do the kriya accordingly, in response. Tichsiv al Shaul, Val Yohanan ben David HaMelech conducted kriya on account of Shaul's passing, on account of Yohanan's passing. The pasuk which mentions al Shaul, Va'al Yohanan, indicates it has to be personal. The kriya needs to be directed in response, as a direct response to a specific person's passing. You have to be aware of that before he does the kriya. And still, even though the pasuk says al, what does it say in the brisa? It doesn't have to be personal. V'tanya armulei meis aviv. He gets word that his father passed away. V'kara, he did kriya. It turns out it was a mistake. Somebody passed away, but his son passed away. V'achkach nimtza b'noi. It turns out it was the son. Yatzei decha kriya. He was yatzei, despite the fact that the pasuk says al, which would perhaps tell us, no, you need to know on account of what you are doing kriya. The Bryce indicates otherwise. Even a generic kriya works. Likewise over here, why are we insisting that oisa and law needs to be personal, with clear identity? Why? Amri, the answer is like this: Loikasha habestam b'mfarish. Al is dafka, is specific. So, if he was informed about his father's death, and as a result he does kriya, it turns out it was mistaken, it was really his son, it doesn't work. Al is dafka. And the Brisa indicates that it works. Let's reinterpret the Brisa. It's not as we thought the Brisa was speaking about, that they told him his father passed away, and it turns out that's not what happened. They told him somebody in his family passed away, and he's thinking, my old father passed away. It was just an assumption. And he proceeded with kriya, and it turns out he was mistaken. That's called stam. It wasn't clearly directed at his father's passing. It was just an assumption. It was an unexpressed notion. That's okay. That doesn't interfere with the kriya. He can apply the kriya to his son's passing as well. Because he didn't clearly, label it otherwise. Likewise by the hafara and the hakama. If he's not sure who did the nether, he's not sure, maybe it's his wife, he can't, discern the voice, and he does the hafara, it would work, as long as it's stam. It wasn't personalized, it wasn't labeled. The reason why in the Mishnah it does not work is because he labeled it. It's my wife, hafara. Turns out it was his daughter. That's the problem. V'atanya, as we find it in another brisa, we find this distinction between stam, where it works, and mefarish, where it doesn't work. Amr lemis aviv v'karei. It told him about his father's passing. He did kriya. V'achakach nimtza b'nai. It turns out it was his son. Lo yotzi de kriya. He has not fulfilled his mitzvah because it was kriya for father, clearly for the father, not for the son. But Amr lemis. He was told about a relative who passed away without knowing who it was. Because savar of he's assuming it's his father who vikara, and as a result he does the kriya. It turns out that it was really his son who passed away. Yatsi de kriya, he's yatsi because it wasn't labeled, it wasn't tagged clearly. It was left up in the air. It was an assumption, it wasn't expressed, verbally expressed, and therefore it can be applied for the son as well. So according to this teretz, whether it's hakama, hafara, or kriya over a mace's passing, if it's mefarish, you have to stick to it. If it's stam, if he didn't clearly label it one way or the other, then it's not really committed one way or the other. He can use it for whichever event he wants. Rav Ashi Amar, he says, look, let's not remodify that first brisa there. It's a doichak, as the Ran says. The brisa says, the first brisa, that he was told his father passed away. He did kriya. Turns out it was really his son. It works. Let's assume the brisa means, literally. He was told his father passed. It wasn't just stam. He assumed it was his father. He was told it was his father, and still it works. How? I'll tell you how. It depends. How soon after the kriya the son passed away? If it's, a significant lapse of time, then you can't apply the kriya to the son's passing, which followed that kriya. But if it's so close to each other, within one, let's call it 1 unit of time, as long as it takes for a Talmud to, greet his Rebbe, Shalom Alecha Rebbe, or some say Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umar, whatever it is, just 2-3 seconds. That's a unit of time. That's like the, smallest, shortest, significant expression. A greeting. That's called the smallest unit of time in terms of events, especially in terms of expressions, word-related halachas, or even not. Even when it comes to kriya on a mace, if it's within such a short time, it's tekadei dibur. It's considered like it's concurrent, like it's bivas achas, like it's happening at the same time. So even if the kriya preceded the misa, it works. If it's so close to it, it can relate to it. It can connect to it. Rav Ashi Amar kan b'toich kedei dibur. What the Brisa says, the kriya upon father's death, which turned out not to be true, can be applied to son's death, which followed that kriya. It works, provided it's so close in time. It's toich kedei dibur. It happened within 2 seconds, 2-3 seconds. Kan lacha kedei dibur. When we say that a kriya, or a hafara, or a kiyum, which was misdirected, can no longer be redirected, that's because you've discovered you need to redirect it a while later. The kriya is done. The hafara is done. It was mislabeled, it's over. You can no longer, redirect it in the proper direction. And the Gemara explains, this is what the first brisa tells us. Yotza yidei kriya, that he's yaitze, even though he did the kriya thinking it was for the father. It turns out father was around. And then his son passed away. No, his son passed away before, but it means he only discovered, right? What happened was that he thought his father passed away. He did kriya. Then it turns out it was really his son who passed away. Right? But he only discovered that after the kriya. It still works. When we say that the kriya, which was done on account of his father's alleged passing, which turned out to be untrue, and then he discovers that his son passed away after the kriya, was speaking that it was discovered that it was his son who passed away, and it was discovered so close to the event, to the kriya, within just a very short time, considered bivas achas, one lapse after 1 unit of time, and therefore it can count for his son. When the Brisa number 2 tells us it doesn't work, it is speaking where he discovered the true fact a while later, way after the kriya. And since the kriya was done for father's passing, it can no longer be applied for son's passing, which he only discovered later on. V'atanya, as we find in the following brisa, here comes a big chiddush. Even if the kriya, listen to this, even if he tore his beged prior to the event, prior to the relative's passing, but if it was close enough to the event, it can be applied. A fellow has an unwell relative, severely sick, and he passed out, and it appears to him that unfortunately the relative died, and he does kriya on occasion of his death. It turns out he was alive and well at the point of kriya, but he passed away soon after. Well, Yotzei de kriya, he's not Yotzei. Kriya has to follow the passing. But when does it not work? If the relative died, an hour later. there's a gersa. Techle dibur ain't tzarech lekroya. The Bach brings it. He did the kriya now, thinking that the fellow was dead. He's really alive and well. Not well, but alive. And within techle dibur, he died. It works. Amazing. He did the kriya while he was alive. It works because it's one unit of it's bevasacha. It's considered like one unit of time because it's so close to each other. It's a chiddush HaTorah, even though practically speaking, in terms of time sequence, this happened before and that happened later. Or in terms of the Torah concept of time, it's one time unit. It's one event. The kriya prior to death can be applied to the death, and that's the maskanas haGemara. When it's within this lapse of time, it's still considered part of the same event in terms of, let's say, in terms of expressions. We're going to see in a minute. You can be chayzer, you can retract your words. It's still the same expression. It's still part of the same event. So if I say something and I retract it within the shir of kedei dibur, I can go back on my word. This applies all over the place, and the Iran says the rationale behind it is because a person, he needs a couple of seconds to, conclude his thoughts, to confirm that he really wants to do it, to close the file, so to speak. So this concept applies everywhere, except for really eventful events, for which we assume that he's really thought out prior to approaching these events, and once he says it, it's over. It's an expression of a real internal a commitment to these things, and therefore he cannot retract. Once it's said, it's said. Chutz megadif, exceptions are megadif, chas v'shalom, person applies a klala to Hashem. He worships an idol, and the Ran says, he said to the idol, Eli ato, you my God. Umekadesh, a person is mekadesh and isha, it's a once in a lifetime event. You better have it, thought out and thought through. Umegarish, and likewise Gerushin, also a pretty eventful event, and therefore in all these situations we say it was an expression of a proper gemirus das, and therefore we don't give him any moment, any chance of chazorah. Once it's done, it's done. So bottom line is we had a Mishnah, hafar, hakama, has to be done without misunderstanding, whether in terms of identifying the source of the neder, identifying the type of neder, identifying the subject material of the neder. The Gemara brings psukim drashes, oisa, the Ran adds hichrishla by hakama. The Gemara compared it to kriya, where we find al, but then we find that it doesn't have to be exact. And we have two terutzim, either the difference between mefarish and stam, when it was specifically directed at something and it turns out to be mistaken, that's your issue. But if it's just left open, mistam, then you can sort of tweak it any which way you want. That's one shot. Rav Ashi didn't go with that. He says, look, the Ran learns that Rav Ashi does go with that, but he adds another chiddush that even by mefarish, I want to add to, even by mefarish, there's a way out. If you switched it within that short time frame to kedei dibur. Continues the Mishnah. Amra koinam te'enim v'anavim elu she'ani to'emes. A wife gets up and says, these figs, these grapes, not for me. So sort of, it's one package, one neder, on both types of fruit. What happened to the husband? Kayam, kiyem l'te'enim. He gets up and says, you know what? I'm okay with the neder on the figs. So what happens to the neder on the grapes? Kuloi kayam. Everything stands. If you do hakama to even part of the neder, everything stands. But hefer l'te'enim, if he disrupted the aspect of the te'enim, it does not spread to the rest of the neder. Einay mufar, the grapes still stand. Unless he explicitly applies his hafar to the anavim. So when it comes to hakama, a partial certification certifies the whole thing. Hafara needs to be applied separately to each part of the neder. The Gemara will learn from the psuk. What if she says like this? Amra koinam te'ena she'ani te'emes. No figs for me. Va'anova shani te'emes. No grapes for me. She totally separated the expressions. Two separate nedarim. Harei elo shnei nedarim. Two unrelated nedarim, unaffected by each other. Mani masnisin. Who's the author of the Mishnah? A partial hakama certifies the whole thing. A partial hafara does not. Rabbi Shmuel, the Sanya, we have a three-way machlekes. Isha yikimenu, Isha yifirenu. That's the pasuk, teaching us the idea of hakam and hafara. As a result of this pasuk, we learn like this: she makes a neder against two types of fruit, te'enim v'anovim. Kiyem l'te'enim, he certifies the te'enim. Kuloi kayim, even the grapes get certified. Hefer l'te'enim, but if you apply hafara to the te'enim, only te'enim get disrupted, but einoi mufar, the grapes still stand, unless he specifies no grapes. Divi Rabbi Shmuel. And that's the Tana of our Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Hari Omer, Isha Yikimenu, Isha Yifeirenu. The pasuk compares the two things. You can't divide hafara, you can't split hafara from hakama. Ma Yikimenu Mimenu, just like when it comes to hakama, the pasuk says Yikimenu, Vidarshan, Yikim Mimenu. It's like we learned the mem twice. Yakim Mimenu, as long as you certified part of the nether, the whole thing stands. The same thing with hafara, which is the flip side of hakama. Af yifirenu mimenu. A partial hafara makes a full hafara. So Rabbi Kiva disagrees with Rabbi Shmuel. It's either all or nothing pertaining to hakama and hafara. But Rabbi Shmuel responds to Rabbi Kiva, you can't compare. Miksiv yafer mimenu. By hakama it says, yakim menu, we dash yakim mimenu. A partial hakama works. Hafara doesn't have that. It says yefirenu. It doesn't say, doesn't have the mem in there to indicate mimenu. Rabbi Kiva responds by saying you can't differentiate makash hafara la'akama. The pasuk clearly connects the two ideas. Ma'akama mimenu, afafara mimenu. Just like the mimenu concept applies to hakama, likewise by hafara, partial hafara affects the whole thing. Amar Rabbi Rabbi Yechanan, Zudi Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva. Here we have a two-way machlekes, but there's a third sheet. Ava chachamim omer. The other way around. A part way, even hakama doesn't affect their whole neder. Makash hakama la'afara, we do connect hakama to hafara the other way. Ma'akama ma'shehefer hefer, just like by hafara. What gets affected by the hafara? The part that you will make for no more. Af hakama, same thing with certifying the neder. Masha kiyem, only the part that you makayim stands, but the rest does not. So three shitas. Chachamim say, what you do is what you get. Regarding hafara or hakama, doesn't matter. Rabbi Shmuel says, when it comes to hakama, yakim mimenu, partial hakama works for the whole thing, but not by hafara. Rabbi Kiva says, well, if it works by hakama, it works by hafara as well. What if she totally splits the neder into two? Amra koinim te'ena shani te'emes, and koinim anova shani te'emes. Those are two nedarim. But you need to actually separate them to that extent to make them two nedarim and make them, independent of each other. What if you simply say, kainam that I'm not eating, loy teina v'loy anava. So you sort of split the two things, you added a loy, loy this and loy that, but you didn't actually express it, in great detail. I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that, as the Mishnah does. Which would indicate that the Tana of our Mishnah requires a real separation, a separate expression per item to make them two nedarim. Otherwise, it would be considered one neder. Amar Rava Masnisin Rabbi Shimoni. In fact, this is Rabbi Shimon's shita. The Amar, you need a full separation in order to separate. This is a Mishnah in Shavuos. We had this a while ago. That a fellow responding to a monetary claim, he denies, he makes a shvuah, and it turns out that he was falsifying. He has to bring a korban, etc. What if he was confronted by several claimants and he denied them all in one denial? It's one violation. If he splits them, he says, not you, no money to you, no money to you. Tanakama says it's a separate denial with separate consequences. Rabbi Shimon disagrees. It's still considered one bundle unless he expresses it totally separate. Shvuah to you, shvuah no money to you, shvuah no money to you. That makes it separate entities. And likewise, our Tana, who reflects Rabbi Shimon's shita, requires a true differentiation, a separate expression. I'm not eating this, I'm not eating that, to make them two separate nedarim. Otherwise, they're dependent upon each other, and it falls back into the category. They read the previous part of the Mishnah where it's a double neder into one, in which case one part could be affected by the other. The only way to separate is by saying it totally separate. Okay, so in conclusion, the Mishnah tells us if there is a tos in terms of hakama or hafara, 3 examples of which: number 1, he misidentified the person making the neder. Not sure if it's his daughter or wife. Number 2, the nature of the neder, nazirus or carbon. Number 3, the material of the neder, anavim or ta'enim. Either way, it doesn't work. According to the first teretz of the Gemara, whether it's hakama, hafara, or kriya lameis, if it's mislabeled, it doesn't work. But if it's left in the open, mistam, then it can be redirected eventually. According to Rav Ashi's teretz, even mefarish can be remedied if it's teich kedei dibur, because we know b'chalat ha'eret kula, teich kedei dibur is one and the same event, except for these 4 examples, which are momentous expressions, momentous events, for which there's no going back. From which there's no going back. And we have 3 shittas regarding miktsas, a kiyum or hafara by miktsas neder. Chacham say the part that you affected gets affected, the rest stands, or the rest does not get affected by what you did. Rabbi Shmuel says by hakama, partial hakama works for the whole thing, but not hafara. Rabbi Kiva says just like by hakama, same thing with hafara. All the best to you, and hatzlacha rabbah.